Hey guys, it's Quana in vertical mode, back with another conversation. Let's chat about Bridgerton season 3. What did you think of this season? Now, I know for many viewers, you haven't had a chance to watch it yet. It literally just dropped this morning at 3 a.m. East Coast time, midnight on the West Coast. I held out. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to stay up until 3 or wake up that early to watch it. So I actually did not get started until around 10:30 this morning. But I went ahead and binged all of this season. And I have thoughts because I also just finished the 4th book, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is the book that this season was based on. So I guess this will be definitely a spoilery review of the season and also a discussion about theories with this season. So if you haven't watched this season and you don't want to be spoiled, then definitely come back to this conversation later on. But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and get started with my initial thoughts. I enjoyed this season. I definitely feel like this season was way more intense. Like the decision to up the ante and reveal Penelope's identity in this season, because they revealed it before, but like the stakes were so much higher in this season to go ahead and cover her and Colin's story this season. It was so stressful, and the part 2 of the season did not let up. So that I literally spent so many of the episodes, especially the last 2 episodes, with my heart pounding in my chest. Scared for my girl. I didn't know if my girl was going to end up with her happily ever after. That said, it's so crazy how they managed to be so similar to the book ending, but yet so vastly different. We got to go back to the very beginning, which was the decision at the end of season 1 to reveal Penelope to us as Lady Whistledown in season 1, because in the books, she is literally not revealed to be Lady Whistledown until her book. So much of the first 2 seasons has been the mystery around Penelope and the would she get caught or wouldn't she, especially with season 2, and that being such a huge part of Eloise's storyline. And then, of course, this season we deal with the fallout from all of that. Now, as much as I enjoyed the season, the end of this season, the way that it ended with her introducing herself as Penelope Bridgerton and not just Lady Whistledown to the ton, I really wish that was the end of the show. I really wish that that was the final episode, because I don't know where we go with things now that we don't have the Lady Whistledown gag. Now, disclaimer, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton is literally the only book that I have read. I have tried to read the first book, The Duke and I, and failed multiple times. I tried to read the second book, The Viscount Who Loved Me, but Kate is so different than Kate Sheffield, which is the book version, is so different than Kate Sharma that I just couldn't do it. Like, I could kind of get past some of the description of Simon in the book and how he's different in the show, but I could not do it with Kate, because I love Simone Ashley too much, and because I had seen too much of it, it was too difficult. I think because I had started reading Romancing Mr. Bridgerton before the season came out, it was a little easier. Plus, with the exception of like the you are not late to the party, but disclaimer, I am definitely talking spoilers for Bridgerton. Because Colin and Penelope look so much, or the description is so much similar to the book description, I could go with Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. Like, it was not a difficult read. I could read it and still picture the actors who play them. And so I enjoyed Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, but I did not like the book version of Colin. I thought he was very stuck up. He was very conceited. He was very full of himself. And it's very giving like very old world beliefs about like his job to protect Penelope. And he follows through with that so much that I was glad to see how they were able to like keep most of the plot points similar, but still change it up enough to be authentic to what they've done with this show. So I really want to know if you've already seen season 3 in its entirety. What did you think? He was such a jerk in the book that even the things that he did in the show that were low-key kind of annoying were better, because you hear his inner monologue, and his inner monologue is really him rambling for pages on end about how jealous he is of Penelope. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of vulnerability of like, you see this woman, she's so talented, but to live in a world where you know that she is not free to be a writer, and you throw that in her face, that's what made him a jerk, was that he like threw it in her face time and time again. And so for that, I was like, I'm not loving book Colin at all. It's also very interesting because unplug this heater, because Penelope in the book, she became skinny. And I think the author had gotten some pushback because skinny was not the standard of beauty back in those days. So the fact that they focus in on that, and she refers to that so much in the book, it's like very much, oh, you were writing this from a 20th century perspective and not what would have been considered beautiful back then. So I'm really glad that we did not get that. I'm glad that they did not try to make Nicola lose weight for this role, because I would have been like, I would have been really salty about that. Truly, really and truly, I would have been salty about that, because she's so beautiful. And she's not big at all. Like, if I wrote an autobiography, I won't talk badly about people who were nice to me. Yeah, I think like that's my one grievance with this season. Everything gets tied up with a bow. Everyone gets forgiven. And Penelope does try to explain herself, but I feel like low-key, the people who didn't see her, like, they give her a very mild, oh, I'm sorry, I should have seen you sooner. Like, there were people who were genuinely rude to her. Eloise, her BFF, and I love Eloise down, but like, there was definitely times when Penelope would be trying to talk to Eloise, and Eloise would not hear her talking to her at all because she was so focused in on her own things. And she never truly apologizes for that. And I don't love that. And she did it to Cressida too. So it's almost like she still didn't learn, because she did it to Cressida, and Cressida tried to call her on it. And even that didn't wake her up and say, oh, maybe Cressida is a little right, and I was treating Penelope like this, and it's my fault. They just kind of flip it back to Cressida. And I didn't feel like that was, I wanted to see them do more with that, because I felt like, as bad as it was that Penelope was Lady Whistledown and she wrote nasty things about some of the people closest to her, she was invisible, and they should have, I think, done a little bit more to acknowledge that. And I think because the stakes are so high in this season, like, I was grateful for episode 5. Her so-called best friend is toxic. Yes, very much. And also, like, can we talk about how toxic it is, that it wasn't like Eloise just stumbled upon Cressida and that was who was available, and so she became her friend. Like, you became friends with the bully who tormented your former best friend. Like, nah, you gotta sit on the bench for a little while. You gotta sit in the timeout corner for a little bit when that's the case, because That was some shady stuff. Now, in part one, I thought we were going to get a full redemption arc for Cressida. And I think they still leave the window open to like do more with her. But where I felt the sympathy for her in her circumstances, when they write that very scathing whistle down about the Bridgertons, I was like, oh, she could kick rocks too. Then we kind of learn it's more of her mother pulling the strings. But for someone who gives off power, you know, it just really illustrates that idea of like people who are bullied were bullied and become bullies because they're bullied. And she's definitely been bullied and in her home. And so she bullied others in order to feel powerful. And so I do feel sad for her in that. I don't know if this is the last that we'll see of Cressida or if she will get that redemption arc. But I was kind of sad to see how easy it was for Eloise to throw her under the bus and dismiss her. Because before Cressida knew it was Penelope, she was just trying to use it as an out. And who could blame her? You spent the last 2 seasons trying to avoid getting married at all costs. At all costs. Not wanting your dresses lowered, not wanting to be out in society, not really having sympathy for your friend when her mom forced her to be out in society. And then it was your turn and you avoided it like the plague. And then you can't even like really show sympathy for this girl who's really about to get married to this man who is ancient of days. Like, I love the actress who plays Eloise so bad, but like, seriously, it just makes me so frustrated because she's such a well-written character for the screen, especially. I can't speak much because since I haven't read her book yet, the way she's in the book, but it doesn't focus in on her as much as she's in the show. And I love the way she's written for the show, except for the fact that it's like at some point you got to eat. I don't want to use the expression eat crow because that's not necessarily a good expression, but like you got to eat some humble pie, boo. Like you really are out here just being very self-centered, and you are one of what? 1, 2, 4 Bridgerton girls. Like at some point, go to your brother and say, hey, I don't want to be married ever and for all. I just want to be an old maid. Can you promise to take care of me? Like, you got 4 brothers. One of them would, I'm sure. So I just felt like they needed to do a little bit more with that. I just can't, as much as I liked this season, I do wish this season was the final season because just the way that it ended was perfect for a finale. That said, I do disagree with a lot of people who were like, we shouldn't have gotten Francesca this season. I can see what they're doing. And Cressida's story is a story that requires more time because if you Google Cressida's name, you will find out that her last name is not the last name that she currently has. That's my spoiler. I have not read her book yet, but her last name, when you Google her name, it is not Bridgerton and it is not the name she currently has. So I think that they did need to start her story earlier, but I don't know. There's a lot. I can see you writing a book and I would see myself doing the same thing too. Yes. It in terms of books, let's talk about the fact that Colin becomes a writer, and that was a lot more of the story. Like I really feel like you can tell Penelope is probably the self-insert for Julia Quinn. Every author has usually a self-insert. If not in every book, at some point in time, there is a book that is written from the perspective of people who like to read and who like to write. And that is definitely Penelope. And because of that, it's only fitting that like her husband also wants to be a writer. So most of the book it spent him talking about wanting to write, and wanting to be free. And I think that we could have gotten a little bit more. Those letters that Penelope wrote to him, I would have loved to have heard her voice doing a voiceover reading those letters. Like, especially as he was falling in love with her throughout the season, having him go to those like at some point she gives him the letters and he reads it, and then he starts to realize that she was always there for him. Let's talk about the Mondriches, okay? Because they included the Mondrich storyline this season. Okay. They included the Mondrich storyline this season. And please let me know in the comments what you thought about this season of Bridgerton. I just can't wait to hear what you guys are thinking. And I definitely can see the Mondrich's storyline. They didn't even finish fleshing it out fully, but it's definitely there to, in my opinion, as like a precursor for who Benedict ends up with, and perhaps even the later seasons, like showing people get into the ton and navigate. And we haven't had that in Bridgerton. Really, everyone has been people who were from the society, and especially with what happens in this episode, which is Penelope is going to use her power for good to give voice to the voiceless. They're those people who at one point would have been voiceless, who now are going to have a greater voice in the society because of who they've become. So I do see the necessity of that, but it felt like at the end that they dropped the storyline, and I'm sure we'll pick it back up next season, but I was a little disappointed that we just didn't get something at the end with like Will saying, you know what, she's right, I'm going to fight for what I want, I'm going to fight for my club, or something like that. Like, just to get that moment at the end where they were going to flip the script on it in that way. So I was a little disappointed. I am going to try to read the next book, but I don't think they're going in the order. So this is where we're going to get into some theory. My theory, having only read book 4, which is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, having skimmed parts of book 1, The Duke and I, parts of book 2, The Viscount Who Loved Me, I completely bypassed what is it? The Gentleman, whatever Benedict's book is, which is book 3, The Gentleman something, because Benedict sure ain't acting like no gentleman right now, okay? He acting like a whole out here in these streets. And then you get into the 4th book, the 5th book, which is To Sir Philip with Love, and then you get into Francesca's book, and then you go into Gregory and Hyacinth and all that. And we're not even going to touch Gregory and Hyacinth because they're kids. I would almost say that unless they do a massive time jump and then recast the actors who play them, we're not going to see their love story play out. Like, they have to drag the show out so much in order for them to be able to give a Hyacinth and Gregory storylines for their romances to where they would be mature enough for us to get that I think we either have to do a time jump with a recast, or focusing on more characters and stretch it out more until they're old enough to do that. I also think it's notable that with Francesca's storyline, we don't get any of the romance, love scenes, nudity, any of those things. We don't get any of those things with Francesca's storyline because the actress who plays Francesca, let's see if I can figure out. Okay, the current actress who is playing her is Hannah Dodd. She's 29. She's absolutely gorgeous. Francesca's supposed to be like 17 or 18 at best. So we definitely were not getting no Nikki with her. I think that will come in future seasons. But I can't help but notice that this season we essentially get spoilers. Again, if you just stumbled on this and you have not watched, okay, you have not watched. I'm just warning you, because I'm gonna be talking about stuff, and I don't want you to come back at me and say, Quana, you ruined Bridgerton for me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, but we got two love triangles essentially. Well, three if you count Lord Debling and everything with that, but so three love triangles, because you have that. Then at the end of the episode, you get the introduction of Michaela Sterling, who either is the twin sister to Michael Sterling or is now going to be the love interest for Francesca. What the hey? What the hey? Like, and sexuality does not exist on a spectrum, and cool if they're wanting to play with, she's a newer character. We don't know what Francesca likes. Francesca has been very closed off, and that's part of her story, is she does not like, even before they introduce Michaela Sterling to her, you definitely can tell that as much as she likes Lord Kilmartin, John Kilmartin, it's because she is trying to figure out who she is, and it's easy to go with the guy who's quiet and seemingly likes her and isn't going to push her to be outside of her comfort zone. It's easy for her to go and be with him than to do anything that's going to challenge her. So she could be bisexual, okay? She could be part of the Rainbow Tribe. That's cool. But to get both her and then also Benedict in this season, when the obvious choice for someone to join the Rainbow Tribe is staring right in the face, and it's Eloise. And it's been Eloise. And the fans all accepted that however the show was going to work, they were giving us a queer-coded Eloise from season 1. We all accepted that because, hello, the vibes are vibing. So I just don't understand why they bypassed Eloise, teased the heck out of whatever was going on with her and Cressida, and then give us this tease now with Francesca, and then give us the full-on threesome with Benedict and Paul and Miss Tully. Is that her name? I didn't even really care for their storyline because so much of it was just them laying in bed together. That's really like, it was like a couple of conversations here and there, but it was just really them laying in bed together. Okay. So I just feel like, why bypass it when we've all been waiting for Eloise to realize that maybe that is partly what she's feeling. So I don't know where they're going with that. And how much of the books they're changing to give us new characters. Now, I think I've said this in my last Bridgerton video, so I'm gonna say it again. I suspect that Eloise does not end up with who she's supposed to end up with. And if I'm not spoiling to those of you who are still here, again, I'm gonna keep reiterate as people come into the live. Spoilers. I'm talking about Bridgerton season 3, season 1, season 2. I am teasing what little information we know from the book titles alone, not having read the books, but just knowing the titles. And we know who Eloise ends up with in her book because it's the title of her book. It's To Serve Philip with Love. She ends up with Marina's husband, Philip. And because the actress who played Marina had spoken out very, very outly about Netflix and the Shondaland team over at Bridgerton about not supporting her when she was being attacked by fans and having to do with racist attacks, that it messed with her mental, and they did not support her through going through those mental crises. Because they talked about that and that's been very outward, I suspect we don't get any mention of her character again. And I suspect that the ending her character was supposed to have, that we're not going to have it. Now, I could be really wrong, but I just don't think they're going to want the attention of that, because if what happens to the character happens, what happens in the book, which is the character dies, then you just killed off one of the only Black female characters who had a major plot line on the show. If she just disappears, then she just disappears in the same way that Simon and Daphne have just now disappeared, right? And grown off into the sunset. So I suspect, and have long since suspected, that Eloise won't end up with him. Now, I would have liked Eloise to end up with Theo, who she met in season 2. They had good vibes, good energy. But again, if Eloise completely ended up being queer or being lesbian, she's been giving those vibes. I think fans will kind of like be like, okay, yeah, that's what we've been getting. They've been teasing that maybe there's more of why she doesn't want to be married, and it's not just because she wants to see the world and she wants to change the world, but because maybe she doesn't feel that way. Then maybe she lies on the other end of the LGBT spectrum, which is that maybe she's asexual. Okay, cool. So maybe her happily ever after isn't a person at all. I think that's cool. I think that's gravy, because you got 8 kids. We like to read those books because we don't like to let characters die. But at the end of the day, the reality is you got 8 kids and all 8 kids managed to find their happily ever after. That's not realistic. Now, this is a fantasy show, but it's not realistic. So I don't know where they're going to go with that, but my theory is that they're either going to make Eloise asexual, or that they will at least give her a different love interest than the one she had in the book. I would be surprised if they gave her the same love interest. Who haven't we talked about? With what time we have left? We haven't talked about, let's talk about Violet Bridgerton. Okay. I am probably most excited for Violet Bridgerton and Lord Anderson, because we got the reveal that she knew about her daddy and Lady Danbury. I can't wait if we get another season. And I've said this before, I don't know if they're going to call the second season, if it'll be Queen Charlotte again, or if it'll be named for Lady Danbury or for Violet. I don't really care. I just want another season of like those 3 together. I think that would be so amazing if we got those 3 together again, because that show was so good and so well done. And I don't think it needs to be Queen Charlotte as the focal point. I think they can shift the focal point to, now second season, we're going to get Lady Danbury's romance with Violet's daddy in the way that we didn't really get to see it fully fleshed out. We'll get to see more of that. And then maybe Queen Charlotte will take a back seat. And then we'll get a little bit of Violet's romance beginning with Edmund Bridgerton. But if in present day, if they pull in the present day storyline of her getting her Mac on with John Anderson, I won't be mad. But we did get the reveal that she knew about her dad, and that she didn't care, that still is her friend. I was about to cry. I was just like, oh my gosh, she knew that her daddy and Lady Danbury was doing the nasty, and she's okay with it. That's so sweet to me. That was so precious. I love that so much for them. So that was one definitely like high note for the show for me, was that storyline. I thought it was really cute that we got more of Kate and Anthony in this season, with their romance and with their love and their story, especially because unfortunately, due to Regé-Jean Page not coming back for the second season, we didn't get to have that with him and with Simon and Daphne. So it was great to hear where her sister is, that her sister is married and happy, that they're going to go visit her in India and have the baby there. Like, that was really sweet. I thought that was really good. It's really smart. Jonathan Bailey has become huge and is getting more and more acting roles. So if he did not return for another season, I would not be surprised. But I think the difference between Simon and Daphne is Simon runs his own estate and Anthony is still the head of the Bridgerton household. So he is still a key character, even though it's no longer his storyline. He always has to be kind of centered in all of this because he's the one who has to approve of all of these romances, essentially. So I think we'll get them again, but I don't know how much we'll get more storyline. But it was nice to see them kind of be the take the mantle from Daphne being the married Bridgertons who can give advice. Now they're giving advice. That was really, really cute. Let's talk. Okay, so let's get back to Colin. I talk about episode 5, y'all, because they took us straight from the carriage ride and them being nasty in the carriage to them being nasty at the house. And can I just say, first of all, while we got glimpses, I did not know whether we were going to get a full kind of nude love scene with Penelope and with Colin, because everything with the other couples was kind of like hidden, half hidden. We got full on mirror scene. And I was like, oh my, oh my, oh my. Okay, oh my. So he definitely was locked in. I do still wish that Penelope had told Colin before, because spoiler for the book, but he knew in the book prior to them getting engaged, I think. Yeah, I think he knew prior to them getting engaged. Like he found out before they got engaged. Like it was all kind of the same night, I think, as the carriage ride. My brain is a little fuzzy with that, but I definitely think he knew before they crossed the threshold of no return. He knew. And so I do think that it was kind of not great that they did the do and he didn't know, because his honorability is like, I'm not going to break it off with you because now I have corrupted you. And as an honorable man, I have to marry you. And even though she does try to give him that out of saying, like, I won't hold you to it. It's okay. Like, no one has to know, da 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 da. But he's an honorable man, so he still is going to stick by. I'm gonna stick by you. I'm gonna stick by you. He's gonna stick by you. And so he does. I do like that they made. Oh, so yes. So, well, thank you for that. Now, I will say this about reading the book, because the book is more from Colin's perspective, even the things that are spoilery, because the show and the book are very, like I said, the major plot points they managed to get for as much as they changed the show. So for anybody who's never read a single book, Queen Charlotte does not exist really in the books. Everything that Queen Charlotte does is kind of done by Lady Danbury. And even to the point of offering the bounty to find out who Lady Whistledown is, that's Lady Danbury. And Lady Danbury is not nearly as like malicious about it as Queen Charlotte is. She's very much like, I just am an old lady who just wants to I'm just trying to get my laugh on. I'm just trying to have entertainment, and this is entertaining to me. So let me up the ante a little bit. And she's not doing it in a malicious way. But aside from that, all the plot points in the show that pertain to Colin and Penelope are essentially the same. I like how the show made the decision to confess Penelope's decision, because that was the last part of the book that I listened to. I listened to the audiobook. By the way, this is not sponsored, but if you have not checked with your local library to see if they have Hoopla, okay, Hoopla, which is, I think, like, it's a free app that you can download, but it is also, you can download it through like just your web browser. And I love it. It's like one of my favorite things. I don't know if this will let me show you what it looks like, what the screen looks like for Hoopla. So it just kind of looks like this. It's kind of hard to see, so I'm not going to share it for very long with me being in vertical mode. Like that. It looks like that. But it is available for free from the public library, and I absolutely adore it. My library gives us 6 downloads like a month. Audio, there's television shows, there's movies, there's books, and so I listen to Romancing Mr. Bridgerton because I tend to not have much time at home. But what I can do is while I'm cooking, I can put my earbud in and I can listen to it without having to worry about the kids hearing it. And I can listen to it when I'm doing my commute in the morning. And since my commute to work is so long, unless I'm talking to like my mom or my best friends on my rides, I can usually get like an hour done, and I can get a book read in like a week and a half, which used to be nothing for me. Like I pull a 3-hour and get it done. So it is longer listening to the audiobook, but if you put it on 1.5, you're coasting. You can get that thing done. It says 12 hours. You can get it done in like 8.5 hours. And in a week, you can easily get that done. That's how I listen to this book. And so much of what happens in season 3 is Colin's decision. Colin deciding that it was best to confess. Colin decided to make the announcement. He takes so much control over the situation. And it is very much like you have to let me protect you. You're weak. You're a woman. Kind of. I mean, I'm not trying to read into anything, but he literally almost says this to her verbatim. And it's like, this is the woman who figured out at 17 how to publish her own gossip column without getting caught. And in the books, she does it for 10 years, not just a few years. She manages to not get caught for 10 years to make her own money so that she can help support her family. So the idea that now he has to come along and do it for her was very distasteful, hearing him think about it and saying it to her. But if it had been more of them making the decision together, and at one point she tries to call him on it. She's like, pump the brakes, dude. Let's decide this together. But I like that she takes more ownership of it, and she does what she thinks is the best thing in order to not hurt her husband and his family, because she loves him so much. She basically sacrifices herself for them. So I prefer the way the show did it than the way that Julia Quinn wrote it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I loved the glow up of Prudence this season. Prudence is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, that girl is gorgeous. I can't remember who her mommy and daddy are, but she is so gorgeous, so pretty. And I don't know how I didn't see that she was so pretty in the first 2 seasons, but she is absolutely gorgeous. And I loved at the end with her kept saying she wanted to have bugs at the ball, and she just sounds like she has lost her mind, like she's so clueless. And they were bugs, but they were butterflies. And that kind of goes with what I had said about this whole season being about transformation and coming out of one shell. Penelope going from wallflower to standing on her own 2 feet, the parallels of like Alice through the looking glass with the symbolism of her constantly seeing, like literally, I've never seen a mirror so much in my life. There's been so many every episode made sure they had at least 3 or 4 mirror shots in this season. And if that is not a heavy allusion to Alice through the looking glass, and the chessboard as well, like they played chess a lot this season, and I've never seen them play chess in this show. The chessboard is just always there in the background, but I've never seen them sit down and play a game, and people were playing it because of the allusion to Alice having to navigate Wonderland and it looking like a chessboard, and her having to go from one side to the other in order to become a queen so that she can save the Wonderlandians from the Jabberwocky. Like essentially that is what Penelope has to do. She has to become a queen, stand on her own 2 feet, go toe to toe with the queen to save the Bridgertons and to save her own family. I thought that was beautiful. But when they released the butterflies, I don't know if you've never seen the Keke Palmer interview where she was on a press run for Nope with Daniel Kaluuya, and they're asking them about like worst worst filming experiences or something like that. And she's telling the story to the journalist and to Daniel Kaluuya about doing a shoot with butterflies and not knowing that butterflies peed and that the butterflies were peeing on her. And she does it in Kiki fashion, where it's like everything is so comical. This is one of my favorite clips from her. If you've never seen it, just Google Kiki Palmer and the butterflies and see if you can find her talking about how they were pissing on her. And all I kept thinking was, I hope these are CGI butterflies. I hope that butterflies are not flying around this room peeing on all these people in these fancy dresses, because I would have died. I would have just fell to the floor laughing. So I do think that I like this season. If I were going to give this season a ranking in order and add Queen Charlotte to it, I would say that season 1 is still my favorite. I think the slow buildup of seeing Daphne and Simon want each other and desire each other before that fully goes into fulfillment, and then literally having a whole episode where they are just having sex all around their house, I think that just was like the epitome of a love story, a romance story for me. Queen Charlotte is probably second, but it was also very sad, but the drama was drama. But you definitely like constantly seeing them fighting their feelings, having these moments where they're together and it's passionate and it's fiery, and knowing that these people truly do love each other, but he's denying himself in order to protect her. That is like one of my second favorite tropes in romance. So that would put this season at number 3 for me. And then season 2 at number 4. And I always put season 2 at number 4 at the end, just because I hated Anthony so much in season 1 for how he treated Daphne, that it was so hard for me to get into that season. And I went so long not watching it, even though this is one of my favorite shows on television, because of how he was in season 1. And I'm also not a big enemies to lovers person. I take that back. In the right circumstances, I'm not enemies to lovers. But I think the messiness of it being like a love triangle with her sister, that was like very unsavory. And it took me a while to like move beyond that. It's still a great season. And I love Simone Ashley. Simone Ashley is just always going to be that girl for me. But at the end of the day, I still prefer Colin and Penelope's love story. And something was just, that carriage scene is going to live in infamy for me. It's like my favorite sensual moments from Bridgerton. Simon licking the spoon, Colin and Penelope in the carriage, Queen Charlotte and King George get in that bathtub, her trying to take off her nightgown and he's telling her just to get in. Those are like top three moments for me in terms of Bridgerton romances. I do have more to talk about, but I'm going to go for now. But I think I may come back later on in a few days once more people have had a chance to watch season 3 to talk with you guys about it. But please, if you watch this later on, let me know in the comments what you thought of this season, what questions you would like me to answer, especially because I have like watched these seasons in exhausted measure, and so I probably can talk more about like some of the literary elements of it. Like I said, the Alice in Wonderland homages were just so heavy here. But on a final note, I just think that we are probably getting the introduction to Benedict's love interest next season. We're going to get more of Francesca kind of coming out of her shell and her relationship with her husband, but also with Michaela Sterling. And if there is a Michael Sterling, or if it is just Michaela, then we will get her maybe awakening to those emotions. I suspect that we won't get Eloise's story for a while because she will need to travel more. Now she's going to Scotland. I suspect that maybe she will go visit a different Bridgerton. How lovely would it be if we got a Bridgerton spinoff where Eloise shows up with Anthony and Kate and goes to India, because this is a girl who wants to see the world. And by golly, why shouldn't she? Why do men get to have all the fun? Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on today's live. I will see you guys next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And most importantly, every Monday night at 9 o'clock, we go live to talk about or to do a watch party for Messy Movie Mondays. This Monday, we are not watching a messy movie. We are watching something in honor of Father's Day. And Juneteenth, we're watching Miles Ahead, starring Don Cheadle, which is available on Tubi. So I will see you guys then. All right. Toodles.